Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C., calling your kind attention once again to Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net. See all the articles, video clips, and please remember, without those books, without Surviving the Cataclysm, Obama, the Postmodern Coup, Barack H. Obama, the Unauthorized Biography, you can't really make sense out of current events. So we're talking about the need to dump Obama. There's got to be a dump Obama movement in the Democratic Party if this thing is to survive. And if they don't come forward with dump Obama and a primary challenger, I guess that is going to be the sociological death sentence for the Democratic Party. It's going to go the way of the Federalists, the Whigs, the Know-Nothings, and the number of other social formations that couldn't make it, right, because they weren't adequate to the changing times. The Petraeus interview, though, is the other big problem for Obama, not just the Democratic primary challenger, but now the neocon Republican. If you look at this Petraeus interview, it's a big puff piece with David Gregory, who made a pilgrimage to the court of Harun el-Petraeus there in Afghanistan, right? He's the generalissimo of the United States. He's the warlord in residence. And if there's ever a war with Iran, of course, it means that Petraeus will be called upon by the grateful nation to come forward and take command of everything, because he's got 99-0 in the Senate, and the guy who didn't vote was Byrd, who was too sick to make it. It would have been 100-0 in the Senate in favor of Petraeus. The question he's then asked is, are you running for president? And he says, it's interesting, what Petraeus says is, I was just reading a book about Grant. He's reading Kipling, so he's reading about British imperialism and the Great Game, of course, and he says, I'm reading about Grant, a general who becomes president. So are you running for president? And he says, well, no, I'm not running. I'm not a politician. Look, every general who has striven for political power obviously does so saying, I'm not one of those hacks, one of those wretched, greasy party men. I'm not part of that parliamentary congressional morass of deals and log rolling and pork barrels and everything else. I fly above that. And that, of course, that's the appeal of Napoleon Bonaparte as vis-a-vis the Directory. That's the appeal of Field Marshal von Hindenburg compared to the Parliament, the Reichstag of the Weimar Republic. That was the appeal of Eisenhower, really, compared to the wretched Republican Party, right, when you had Senator Joe McCarthy, the anti-communist witch hunt zealot and scoundrel, competing with Bob Taft, the union buster, right-wing extremist Republican of the Taft-Hartley Act, which has just been a disaster for our country. Eisenhower flies in above all that. He comes in as the victor of Normandy who gets things done, and he's not a dirty politician. So the fact that Petraeus says, I'm not a politician, is obviously what a presidential candidate who's a general would say. I'm not going to go into the primaries. I'm not going to get matching funds. I want nomination by acclamation. In other words, accept a draft. And they don't ask him. Gregory doesn't ask Petraeus, would you accept a draft? And even there, any answer he gives would obviously be conditioned by future facts. He'd say, well, I didn't want to do this, and I did it with great reluctance. And you can see over the many months I said no and no and no. But now the demand of my countrymen, I'm like Washington, right? He didn't want to do it. But now the demand has become overwhelming. So if you go and look at that interview and do a little textual analysis, you'll see that the entire line of questioning depends on the first one. Are you a politician? No. Are you running for president? No. Why would he do that? He's got to wait for the draft to emerge. He's got to let other people do this. This is how generals generally run for the presidency, especially in more recent years. Remember, of course, that the other Republican candidates are essentially a joke, right? Palin, the reactionary imbecile. Huckabee, the clown, and entertaining and engaging, but a clown. Pawlenty, a non-entity. He's in Iowa because he can go right across the Minnesota-Iowa border. That's fine. but he's going nowhere. You look at Haley Barbour and Jim DeMint. These are Southern regional candidates of very limited appeal outside the Deep South. They're really favorite sons in that older concept. Who else do we have? Well, of course, we have Mitt Romney. Now, this is more of a serious candidate with his Wall Street connections. He's an asset stripper, a hedge fund hyena. That seems to be the preferred type of candidate these days, especially for Republicans, but for Democrats too. But he's been the liberal governor of Massachusetts. He's got the wrong position on abortion, or did. And, of course, he's the author of the Massachusetts health bill with individual mandates and everything else that later became the basis for Obama's plan. So he's not acceptable to the Tea Party. Now, Petraeus, by contrast, Petraeus can get the Tea Party in his pocket in an instant because Petraeus is a general. He's a 4-star general. He's really a 5-star. He's a generalissimo. He's beyond field marshal. He's the unique warlord of the United States. If you look at the Tea Party, go and talk to them, you'll see they're all retired military. They're all collecting their Pentagon TRICARE and their military pensions, and they would all say, yes, sir, and snap to attention when Petraeus comes forward and says, your country needs you, and there we go. The other aspect is, for the Republicans, of course, he would be a likely winner. He would be able to deal with Obama and his indecisiveness and his bungling and all the questions about Obama. What's his religion? Where was he born? What's his name? How old is he? The mystery candidate. And the mystery is getting deeper, as the Pew Research report reminds us. So Republicans are going to like him because he's a general. Tea Party, more or less the same thing. How about the independents? Well, of course, Petraeus is thoughtful. He reads books. He reads books about Kipling. He reads books about General Grant. He's somebody who thinks. He's the thinking man's warmonger, and that's what the independents love. Now, of course, behind this, as we've cataloged in website tarpley.net and from week to week here, we have the American Enterprise Institute. We have the entire Kagan clan. We've got the Weekly Standard with William Crystal and that entire group, Charles Krauthammer, Max Boot. Somebody has gotten a hold of emails exchanged between Petraeus and Max Boot, where Petraeus is trying to portray himself as a total friend of Israel, even though he had said something in public that looked a little bit different. He wants to reassure them that's not really what I meant at all. That stuff is on the Internet. You can look at it, quite interesting. And Frank Gaffney, the entire neocon faction. And that means a lot of networks, a lot of money. And therefore, this is a formidable presidential candidacy. Those guys at the American Enterprise Institute and the Weekly Standard are not wasting their time and their money on Petraeus because he's told them privately that he'll never be a candidate for president. They're doing it because of the opposite, that he's told them that he wants to be. And indeed, you can look on the Internet, you can find Petraeus telling an Iraqi some years ago that he wants to be president, and the guy asked him, would it be 2008? And he says, no, that's going to be too soon, and 2012 might look better. We don't know. So that's, I think, the story. Don't be duped into thinking that Petraeus has absolutely ruled out being a candidate. He has not even done that verbally. And even if he did do it verbally, what difference would it make? He'd have to bow to force majeure, right, to the overwhelming necessity. Now, that also then leads us to the cratering of Obama. If we look at the Real Clear Politics page here, and their compendium, it's like a bringing together of all kinds of public opinion polls, we'll see that Obama has gone definitively negative. As of the 21st of July, he slipped below 50-50. In other words, 47 against him, 45.8 in front, and that has been widening ever since. So Obama's been in negative territory now for about a month. Bad news for Obama. Time to gear up. Dump Obama. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.